Hello MGTOW. This video is dedicated to Mr. Jerry Spence, the Native American attorney, famous attorney, who wrote a most wonderful book titled How to Argue and Win Every Time. In which he emphasized the importance of communication. The topic today is MGTOW as it relates to animal domestication. In his 1973 book release, Existentialism and Humanism, the French philosopher and novelist Jean-Paul Sartre dared to put forth the argument that man was forlorn. The definition of the word forlorn means means that man, or it means that man or whoever happens to be forlorn is sad because alone or neglected. Now, Paul Sartre was referring to a god who a prior philosopher by the name of Friedrich Nietzsche had declared dead. Now, how does all this relate to the topic at hand? It is somewhat evident to me when we examine the way in which people tend to want to hold on not just to others, but to things they hold dear, like inanimate objects, animals, or even ideas, that our want to not be alone in the world borders somewhat on some sort of psychopathic tendency. In the 16th century, the Italian astronomer and mathematician Galileo Galilei first pointed a spyglass to the heavens, and later a man named Carl Gustav Jansky in 1937 constructed the first radio telescope. Since then, our scientific search for extraterrestrial life has been constant. Some claim that a crash took place in Roswell, New Mexico, USA, and that we're not alone. But we have yet to see the living proof. Now, I mention all this because for the man going his own way, that is, for the MGTOW man, the practice of animal domestication is only, in my opinion, one step removed from the plantation. And we engage in this practice, I believe, because we truly feel alone. But turning animals into pets can be as harmful to them as using them for our entertainment. What comes to mind right now is images of bullfights, horseback riding, lions jumping through hoops, zoos, SeaWorld, etc. The first point I want to make here is that The human actions that result from this idea of animals as human family is harmful to animals. One has just to think very briefly, and several examples come to mind, like feeding pigeons in a city, feeding other birds at the park, etc. Feeding the pigeons in a city can be harmful to the pigeons because it makes them dependent on humans for their sustenance, and many can perish as a result of that. Feeding other birds at the park can alter their mating habits and their migration patterns, having negative consequences for the birds that are fed by humans. But also, again, in regards to birds, when we bring them into our home, we must severely limit their freedom and their natural ability to fly, caging them and clipping their wings. Other animals also suffer from having their freedom taken away by us. Dogs, cats, and other animals are forever separated from their animal family. This is the equivalent of someone taking your family away and saying that you now belong to a group of cows. Domesticated animals spend a lot of time in isolation. Think of all the people that have to go to work worldwide and must leave their pets behind on a daily basis. Apparently we accept this because we justify this by telling ourselves that we love our pet, quote unquote pet, and we don't see it as a human condition created for our own amusement, for our own entertainment, for the purpose of putting a blanket over our feelings of loneliness. But animals are not always loved. People become angry when, for example, their dog poops on the furniture, and many punish the beast to try and teach it a lesson. There are even stories of pet eyes being poked out or dogs being tied to a car bumper and dragged. They also have their genitals removed. Excuse me. Other animals get branded via being treated intentionally burned with a red hot iron. Another way in which animal domestication is hurtful to animals is that we take them from their natural environment and put them in an artificially created human world, a world that is not good even for us. Think fluorescent lighting and mechanically pumped air through a closed building. We can never perfectly replicate the composition of the ocean in a saltwater fish tank, to the detriment of the fish's health and well-being. And what can be said of the practice of breaking a horse in order to make it comply to our wishes? We do not want to be slaves. We do not want anyone to break us. But what we do to these defenseless creatures? The truth remains that animals never needed us for their survival in the first place. By feeling sorry for them and taking their freedom away, we alter the ecosystem and perhaps evolution itself in ways we do not fully understand. Indeed, many animals become feral. That is, they return to the wild on their own, if given the chance. There are also negative health risks associated with animal domestication for the animal. Over time, they become weakened and sickly. Their ears drop and their muscles become loose. The idea that because animals have a limited mental capacity, we can and should do as we please with them is disrespectful to them, and it's an idea whose time has passed. This kind of thinking is the kind of thinking that leads us to abuse them. We abuse rats in the laboratory. We abuse them in experiments. And this is the kind of thinking that leads us to heartlessly transplant the head of a monkey onto another. Our right to dominion over animals needs further examination, in the same way that traditionalist women need to examine the right to a man's resources and labor. The other good reason to stop the practice of acquiring pets and domesticating animals is that it is harmful not just to animals, but to us humans as well. According to Medical News Today, feeding pigeons in a city can get you really sick. This is because of the yeast found in the intestinal tract of the birds that can bring you an illness that often begins as a pulmonary disease and may later affect the central nervous system. This disease is known as cryptococcosis. According to another study completed by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 4.7 million dog bites occur in the United States each year, and 800,000 of those bites result in medical care. With the U.S. population being around 325 million as of this 2017 year, one has to wonder whether dogs are truly man's best friend, or whether these animals are happy with their domesticated situation. And please note that these numbers are only for dogs and only in one country. And according again to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the number of serious injuries, that is serious injuries, per number of riding hours on a horse is estimated to be higher for horseback riding than for motorcyclists and automobile racers. And horses also kick and bite when we are not riding them. None of this takes into account the health risks from prolonged exposure to shedding animal hair, animal feces, urine, etc. The fact remains that owning another being is a nasty business. Animals can be dirty, expensive, and noisy. They can sever the relations with your neighbors. The conditions of domestication are never optimal, like especially in the case of aquatic animals. There is insurance to be brought, vaccine schedules to keep, daycare to pay, permit fees to register your beast at the local government offices, etc. There is extra food to purchase, poop to clean, and additional space to put aside for your furry slave. So is this symbiosis or parasitism? What are we willing to do? How much more are we willing to excuse ourselves for this form of self-entertainment? Okay, so what are some of the solutions to this problem, you ask? I believe that for one, we can strive for creating better human relations instead of avoiding the problem of feeling alone by creating and continuing to entertain the concept, the idea of pethood. Next, we need to recognize that there's a double standard in pet ownership. This is a double standard for the man who wishes to go his own way. We must recognize that no one is free if only some of us are free, and that no one is worth possessing who can be quite possessed. We need to recognize that by domesticating animals, you yourself become domesticated. You yourself become a homing pigeon. Is that what you want to be? A homing pigeon? We can also adopt the belief that when we see animals in their natural environment and we leave them there, we may know them and remember them better because the experience was all the more real. And last but not least, if you believe in a God, and you believe that that God entrusted man to care for the earth and everything in it, why would you wish to take an animal's freedom away and your own freedom by choosing to domesticate them? MGTOW, I want to thank you for listening to this understandably not common point of view. If you feel as though you learned something, please do like the video, share, subscribe, and let me and your fellow MGTOW know in the comment section what you think about what you have just heard. I thank you very much for your participation in this communication between all of us. Thank you.